Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
Hey everyone, Meredith here. You're listening to our podcast, the Afternoon Snack Podcast. Today's episode is a little different. We've actually never done one of these before. It's a compilation episode of some of our best tidbits, clips, and takeaways from our most popular mindset episodes. Stop saying should. We're going to talk about emotional resiliency, the 5 pillars of success, and way more. This is like the best of the best, the greatest hits. So if you need a mindset pick-me-up, look no further than this episode. Check it out.
There are far too many examples in human history of people who are either come from very poor circumstances or end up in horrible situations that demonstrate willpower. There are too many examples of that to say it's hard-coded and you don't get to decide when to flex those muscles. So I think it is something that can be developed. And I think part of our issue as a society is that we don't live in a society where we really have to make hard decisions or do things that we don't want to do. I think about life around the turn of the 20th century or like in the 1800s, there were things that you had to do because they were required for survival. Like in the middle of the summer, chopping wood for the fireplace in the wintertime. I bet you plenty of people didn't want to go do that, but they know what happens if they don't, and it's not good. You know, making sure that food is being harvested and put away, things like that. Things that like you're making decisions that won't benefit you for months. People don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to chop wood.
You can coast. And some people, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, some people are totally content with coasting.
Which is fine.
You can get through life coasting. You can do a half-assed job. You can show up at work when you need to show up. You can do the bare minimum. You can, eat whatever food. Like you can be content. And maybe that's what makes you happy. But if you're not that person or you want more.
I think that's
in our life, like you have to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you really have to do. I mean, like going to work. Some people don't even need to go to work.
Well, I think that's why there's a huge industry built on like the people who want more out of their life in many different realms, not just health and fitness, but in, financial and business and relationship. They want more. And they're trying to find someone to give them the answers. Just tell me how. Just tell me what the hack is. People know what to do. They do. Everybody already knows. It's the doing that's hard.
The hack is doing it.
Yeah. Motivation doesn't precede action. It's action that precedes motivation. And it goes both ways. Inaction precedes lack of motivation. So the more you do something, the easier that something is to do, especially if it's routinely something you don't want to do.
Well, it goes action, motivation, action.
More motivation, more action.
Yeah. And that's why when you said you have to practice getting up off the couch.
Yeah.
It's all the times that you've like just willed yourself to get up and by like just starting the action. Will is not motivation.
No.
That's just like doing it. Just do it. To get the motivation because you did it and you feel good about it. Then the next time will be easier because you're like, oh yeah, last time felt really good when I did this.
Yeah.
That's the motivation.
Yeah. And then you do it enough and you're like, this is just something that I do.
You don't even think about it.
You kind of embrace the suck, like the shitty parts of it. And it's like baked into your day.
Yeah.
But it's willpower is quite transient. Like as soon as you stop, it's harder to get going again. It's harder to stop back. It's like behavioral friction. It's much easier to keep something moving than it is to get it moving. So it's the same thing. So as far as like having willpower or not having willpower, or some people being of stronger mind and some people not, everybody has this part in their brain. Everybody has it. You got the hardware. And when you decide to use it, that's when you develop the mind. The brain is the hardware. The mind is the thing that we have control over. And it can start to change our whole outlook. So you start to shift into someone who has that emotional resiliency and you're building it because you're doing something you hate. You don't want to do it. You don't want to get up and go run. You don't want to go outside. It's dark and cold. Oh, this sucks. And by the way, you're allowed to say that. It might actually help to say that. And then you go do it anyways. And then you start to build that emotional resilience and that negative feedback loop that you had before, which is like I make emotional decision making that, or I make emotional decisions that don't benefit me globally. That makes me feel like I don't have a lot of control over my life. I don't have a lot of self-determination. I'm just, a buoy in the ocean. That starts to reverse. That starts to go the other way.
All of a sudden you're swimming against the current.
You are the current.
Yeah.
You determine what the current is.
Yeah.
You're no
like
longer
that.
a buoy. You're the ocean. But that's like that change. You have to make that change and you start to develop I'm making better decisions. I understand how this works. I'm doing things I don't want to do. I feel good with that. And I'm doing this enough. I can see this, I can see where this is going now. I didn't know I could do hard things. And if I can do this hard thing, maybe I can do that hard thing. Maybe I can start my own business. Maybe I can run a marathon. All of these things that probably felt off limits because you're that's just not me. I'll never be able to do that. Now everything is within your reach.
Yeah.
It's
the
right there.
Self-efficacy is very high.
Yeah.
The belief in yourself, in your preparedness, in your capabilities is skyrocketed.
But you determine the way that feedback loop goes. You determine which way the arrow goes. Is it going in a positive direction or is it going in a negative direction? And you build that. It's something you can build.
And we've said it, and I think it holds true based on my experience with people. How you do one thing is how you do most things.
A lot of things.
Or everything.
Yeah.
And you can start somewhere small. And then it will probably trickle into other areas of your life. That self-efficacy. Well, if I can do this workout, if I can do CrossFit, if I can do Fran, if I can do this huge ass hero workout, or I can run a marathon, I can answer a work email.
Yeah. The magnitude of the hard thing isn't as important as you do it. It doesn't need to be this monumental heroic thing. It just needs to be a thing. So I have this client who I've worked with for several years, and she has, it's like frozen shoulder. Do you know what this is?
No.
Where essentially I can put my hands over my head. If you're listening, my hands are over my head right now, straight up. Frozen shoulder, at least the version that she has, she essentially couldn't lift her shoulder past 45. So nowhere close to getting it overhead. And then, limited range of motion in certain pressing movements. And this is a person who's athletic, an athlete, works in athletics. So it's kind of a problematic injury and thing. And she's had this for a year, frozen shoulder or more at this point. And, I'm aware that she's seeing people and getting it worked on and just constantly trying to figure out what's going on with it and how it happens and how to make progress with it. And so last week she told me that she said one little update that I have, and she's so modest about it, is that she said, I have enough range of motion to do a bench press now, which is a huge improvement in what she's been able to do. And she's been making just faster progress with it lately. So I said, does it feel surreal to me making this kind of progress after so long of not making any progress with range of motion? Because this has just been ongoing. And she said, I've been doing effing range of motion exercises forever, and it was just killing all the fun of lifting. So this made me excited. And she said, I feel like I finally made it to base camp after walking to the mountain for a year, if that makes any sense. And I thought that was a great analogy because she knows even with the progress that she's been making, she's just at the base camp. Now she gets to start to climb the mountain, but she's been walking this whole time to the camp. I was that's an amazing analogy, but you don't just get to helicopter to base camp. That option doesn't exist.
Yeah. And some people, I like that because even though, you're not going up, you're still making progress to eventually go up. Whereas some people who maybe don't see it in that perspective might imagine themselves as standing still.
Yeah.
But
not going anywhere.
And not keep going. And that's with injury, that's with, nutrition, that's with body composition goals or health goals. And that's certainly the case with fitness.
I do wonder too, she's an athlete. She, has been an elite athlete. She works with elite athletes. And so there's this, I feel and not to put athletes on a pedestal, because I definitely don't want to go down the path of muscular Christianity, kind of over idolizing the athlete. But I do think that there are certain mindset changes that happen for athletes. And there's a certain skill set, mental skill set that athletes have. And you probably learn it through sport. So I wonder if that kind of changes things for her in a way that's time is going to pass anyways. It's going to go on. So I can either be sour about this and stop trying because I don't believe that my situation is ever going to change or it's ever going to improve, or I just keep working at it because I have nothing else to do anyways.
It's like that post we did, the green light, the red light thing.
Yeah.
You're sitting at the red light and you can't stand waiting and you feel like it's never going to turn green. So instead of just waiting a little bit longer, you turn around and go home.
Yeah.
And then little did she know the light was turned green just after she turned around. Do you know how hard people who are winning work? The hardest.
Yeah.
Because that's what it takes to continue to win in anything competitive.
Yeah.
It's similar to when you work hard to lose weight. You have to keep doing what you're doing to lose the weight, to keep the weight off. Just what you did to get fit, to hit that 200-pound snatch.
Yeah.
You have to keep doing that to even just maintain that 200-pound snatch.
You're telling me. Yeah.
And then if you lose it, just because you used to be able to do it doesn't give you the entitlement to say, oh, well, why can't I do that? I used to be able to, because times change. You change. Your work ethic changes. Your outside responsibilities change.
Do you know what a mental shit situation it is as an athlete to be able to look back on a time in your life when you were performing better and grapple with that period of time and what you used to be able to do while still working hard to not even be as good as you once were? Like, that's been my situation for years, and yours too, in a lot of ways. So it's like, it's so tempting. It's so tempting to be like, well, what's the point? I'm never going to be that good again. It's just never going to happen. And mail it in. Like, you fight that battle every single day. And that's the reality of every athlete ever, is that you're going to get to a point where that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Where you're the only thing, if you're just looking at objective measures of success, weight lifted, paces run, times, results, if that's what you're looking at as your singular metric of success, there is a time coming where that number, there's no way to prevent it going down. There's no way to prevent it. And if you don't have a good understanding of what you're going to do mentally when that starts to happen, it's not going to be good. And those are athletes. Those are people who have had success. And people who haven't had that level of success, they aren't athletes. They don't have that mental strength. Maybe the only thing that they've ever had to celebrate, maybe ever, is what they used to weigh that one time when they graduated college.
Yeah.
I used to weigh this and, I just want to weigh that. I just want to look like this and I just want to have that. If the only thing that a person has ever had is the way that they used to look, holy shit. Because guess what? You know what you definitely can't. So you might be able to hold on to some athletic performance. You might be able to redirect that in different sports and different categories and classes and age groups and whatever. You know what you can't prevent though? Saggy tits. That is not something that you can prevent. Wrinkles.
Yeah.
There
are some results that are completely outside of our control. Yet people are still saying, I feel like I should.
There's a biological endpoint to being a human being, and it's the same for everyone. And before you get to the endpoint, which by the way is death, if you're lucky enough to get to death by old age, your body is going to change a little before you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I have 2 points. The first is finding joy in what we're doing, because that's number one. When you know that the weight is going to have to get lighter, you have to know why you're doing something. Maybe your body changes, but you're still doing the same amount of work because you value your health. You enjoy fueling your body. Your value is wellness. So it doesn't matter that your body is changing a little bit. You're still doing what makes you feel good. And it's the same thing in the gym. For us, my snatch maybe could get back up to 175. I don't think it will, but I still snatch every single week because I love it. And you know what? A 155 and 160 day is still amazing for me. I'm stoked about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there saying, oh, I used to be able to lift 175. Yeah, certainly there are days where I'm like, oh, I'm getting weak. And it kind of sucks, but I'm like, but I can still snatch. I still love this. I still love coming into the gym and enjoying lifting.
Yeah.
And then there are some days where and this is who we're speaking to, it still feels really hard for me to get to the gym. I feel like I'm still putting in the same amount of effort in my snatch sessions or in my workouts. And yet my results aren't as good as they could have been. But it's feeling just as hard because I have other things in my life that I'm putting my effort into.
A lot of people don't have a working knowledge of food, even though they eat it. And then, there's a lot of shame and judgment that can come with the process of changing your diet and with, struggling with any part of that. I think people feel embarrassed a lot of the times, or it can seem so basic that people are like, why am I struggling with something that's so basic? You know, the fact that they are working to them in a way that feels really hard, but not seeing results because they aren't doing enough. I think that is a difficult duality for people to deal with and to grasp and to accept.
Yeah. And I'll add, it's like doing enough for long enough also.
Right.
But to your example of, you know, there not being pressure on someone, or there's no expectation for someone who's learning an instrument to become a master in a very short period of time. Part of that is because you're not, you know, walking through the grocery store or in line at the grocery store and you see like 4 magazines that say, so-and-so learned like how to play Jimi Hendrix in, 3 months.
Right.
But you do see like so-and-so lost 40 pounds in 10 weeks.
Yeah,
which,
you're right.
I mean, that's almost moderate for a magazine. It's like, has lost 30 pounds in 4 weeks.
28 pounds in a month.
Day.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
that's part of it. So it's like, yeah, of course you're going to feel like you're failing when you think about that. But what a lot of like specifically our clients don't see, or a lot of like people who have this goal of fitness or health, is that they're not the only ones where they're struggling with the rate of progress. We say it in the plan, this is what the expected rate of progress. Yeah. Basically, if you follow it to a T, which straight up, not that many people do.
No.
And that's okay. We don't expect perfection. But it's like, you have to be pretty consistent and pretty compliant, and then also be doing it for like at least 3 or 4 months to really see a change.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with fitness, and maybe not even with fitness.
I think
because
that
it depends.
There's more opportunity for like early adaptation. If you are doing nothing for fitness, like zero on the couch, and you start even the most basic fitness routine, you're going to make progress right away. It's baked in. The thing that people run into with fitness is that when they get through that kind of newbie gains, novice adaptation phase, then they're like, well, what's going on? It's not working. Why isn't it working? And it's like, no. It's like, it's working. Your progress is going to slow down because you've kind of tapped out that specific, phase of adaptation. And sometimes people struggle to tolerate that. Like, well, what do you mean I'm not going to make progress as fast? You're not going to make progress as fast. Like, wait until you're 15 years into it and you haven't PR'd anything in 5 years, and then check back in with me.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it. But you kind of have to earn the right to do the work to make real progress.
Yes.
And the way that
there's a buy-in.
Yeah, you're going to wade in the waters, right? Like, I think that so much of the nutrition industry is developed on this idea that's like, just jump in the pool. It doesn't matter if you can swim, just jump in. But what happens is people just drown in whatever pool they've jumped into because they don't have the prerequisite skill or ability. It might be the wrong approach for them, might be inappropriately low calorie, weird,
unsustainable.
Rules, for lots of different reasons. And, a lot of those things and those programs are not developed to actually help people. They're developed to sell. And so they'll sell you whatever you want to hear as long as you buy the book or the program or the template or whatever it is. Whereas the way that we work with people is really, here's the wading pool. Like, first, we're going to dip our toes in, and then we're going to walk into our ankles. And that's kind of how you develop over time the prerequisite skill, ability, knowledge, patience to do the work that's required to make progress. But you have to be able to tolerate that period of time where what's hard for you is not enough.
Yeah. And I don't blame people for having expectations.
No.
It's when you're coming from a place of curiosity or not. And what we get from certain people, or we've experienced, is the line, I feel like I should have these results because I have been trying hard. Instead of, either intrinsically looking in and saying like, okay, I'm working really hard and I'm not seeing results. Is it possible that I might need to try harder? Or is it possible I need to do this for longer? Or is it possible that I just need to make, like I said, give it enough time for this feels easy and then add more? Or what is somebody else doing that I'm not doing? Never miss twice. Like, if you miss a workout on Wednesday, Thursday, even if it's busy, do something, even if it's 5 minutes of burpees, because it checks the box, it keeps the habit going, and it aligns with your values as a human being. Even if it's not everything, it still counts. And that just, it's like, I did that. And it does, you don't have to quantify it or anything like that. It's just like, you didn't miss today, and that's enough. And if you never miss twice, you're over 50%. And that's pretty good, actually. Much better than 0.
Yeah, I think checking that box that says, like, I give a shit about the thing that I say I give a shit about, that's a really important box to check. And I think with repetition, if you can get people to buy into some of these things and extend the timeline and start to see that imperfect consistency pays off, I just think that over time, people start to release themselves from this mindset because they start to see that, like, I don't have to be perfect. And I'm a lot further along now with my imperfect approach than I've ever been with my perfectionism or with my all or nothing. But you got to get people to stick it out for long enough. And that's hard to do. And if you're someone who like gets stuck in these all or nothing sort of situations, having a coach or someone who you can talk to really helps, just to like, hey, you stepped off the path. That's fine. It's not a mile away. You just have to sidestep back onto it. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. We all do it.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll say to my clients, what can you do today? Like right now, tell me what you can do this afternoon to just make you feel a little bit more grounded in your values and who you want to be as a person and who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to remember that, like, I stated earlier that this way of thinking is a way to protect ourselves when really in the end it's not. So being able to work through these thought processes is the best way to protect yourself, because if we're always all or nothing and doing the what the hell effect, like you give in and then you feel upset, so you give in more, like it's just going to be a vicious cycle. So if we dig deep and really decide how we want to approach these situations, you're going to find a lot more success. And it's definitely annoying. It's definitely going to be hard work. And again, like having that coach there to help would be awesome. But you have to practice it like outside of that situation. Because if you're in that situation without having that practice, then it's going to be very, very difficult. So, working through these things before they actually occur, then it's in your head. Then you have tools for the toolbox and you know how you can adjust when you need to, but it will keep you from jumping off that ledge.
Yeah. A simple question that you can ask yourself is on Monday when you have, your week laid out and it's looking great. A simple question is, what challenges could arise that will impact my ability to achieve all of these things on, each day, whether it's hitting my macros, preparing dinner, going to the, and when they arise, if they do arise, what will I do? How can I, Meredith hates this word, but how can I pivot? How can I adjust? It's a really good mental exercise. And so when it comes up, then you can say, oh, I remember I have a frozen meal in the freezer. I'm going to just whip that up for dinner tonight. I'm glad I thought that through, or I'm glad I froze leftovers from Sunday night, or whatever it may be. You might not foresee challenges, but like the more you do it, the more you know how to adjust for any challenge because you've adjusted so much. It takes time, but over time, you just get better at it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know that a lot of times, like when these challenges come up, like they're not coming out of left field. I would say 98% of the time. I always ask my clients that too, like any roadblocks you see this week, like it's always on the radar, but because we're trying to avoid feelings of being overwhelmed and stressed out, we just tend to block it out until it happens. And then we're all of a sudden way more stressed than because the situation's here, we don't know what to do. So again, just, asking yourself, looking ahead, seeing what's going on and how you can adjust before it happens.
Sometimes like the answer is Wendy's. Sometimes the answer is like, yeah, I just went to McDonald's. Like that was the best I could do. That was better than not eating. And I think there's a lesson in there. And I kind of came to this conclusion myself. And it's, you don't have to assess every single thing. Like, was that bad? Was that good? It just was. And you can move on the next day. And like, if you need to say, something small, like I rarely eat fast food to make yourself feel better. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to get a really nutrient dense few meals in. That's fine. It doesn't need to be this like thing. And not everything has to be a thing. That's so exhausting to think about it. And sometimes with my clients, I don't even ask them about their nutrition. I'll say like, how was your weekend? Was the best part? And they're like, well, did you see my logs? And I'm like, yeah, but we talk about your logs every single day. Today, let's just talk about life. So that's kind of another tidbit that struck me this weekend.
Yeah. And I think another thing that had just popped in my head is that the more you kind of practice these things, the easier it is. So then when in the beginning, it may feel like you're planning every single step of your life, but at some point you're going to get to the point where it's second nature to be able to pivot, to make that adjustment without a second thought. And getting to that point is like, you know that you made it. Like you did all that hard work to be able to live in this gray area and to live your life without having it every second be planned out or having everything figured out right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, we're human.
The journey is what brings you happiness. Like you have to enjoy the process of getting where you want to go and also realize like you're never going to get there. There's no there. There's no summit. There's no, okay, I'm done now. I can rest. You need to find a way to enjoy the work that you're doing because that's all there is. Truthfully, that's all there is. I think everybody has probably suffered from this at some point in their life, which is just belief that if I achieve X, then I'll be satisfied. And like I did, like I thought going to the CrossFit Games was going to be this like amazing experience. It was going to change my life, but it didn't. And I know a lot of people who have that same experience. So you better, like, it was a good thing that I enjoyed the process of getting there because that's what I think about. When I think about that time in my life, it's not competing at the games. It was all of the training and the experiences and the people that went into getting to that point. It had nothing to do with the actual competition experience and the achievement of making it there.
We always use running as an example, but crossing the finish line of a marathon is not it.
No.
When you cross the finish line of a marathon, you're not like, wow, I crossed the finish line. I did it.
I can stop now.
It's, wow. All of that training and work, that's what causes that emotion, that feeling of crossing the finish line. It's not just the crossing of the finish line. It's not getting to compete at the CrossFit Games. It's all of it. So encompassing. And if you didn't enjoy the process, then you're going to cross that finish line and you're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
At least not maybe in that moment, but after you're going to say, well, that was kind of a waste of time.
Especially if you're not like, you're doing something that you don't really like to try to get to a place that you think will make you happy. Like that happens all the time. So there's just so much value in finding a way to enjoy the process and the people who you're with doing it, like everything that goes into life, all bundled up into like, this is me. This is the path that I'm on. I'm on it with people who I love and who bring value to my life and make me a better person and make me want to be a better person. That's everything that there is.
Yeah, I think it's understanding small scale value. So daily value. So if it's changing your diet, it's nourishing your body on a daily basis so that you can feel great at 2 p.m., for example, rather than, oh, it's going to get me to 130 pounds.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's like you're going to walk into your office one day and your colleague's going to go, you look like you weigh 130 pounds now. That's awesome. I'm going to invite you to lunch. You know, like, no, that's not that's not how things happen. Gratefulness is an overall orientation towards feeling gratitude in all of your human existence, not just the positive aspects. And so it's being grateful for the life you have, even in times of suffering. It's being grateful for the resources that you have and your ability to overcome adversity, being grateful for people in your life, even if they sometimes cause you pain, being thankful that you have something to live for, even though life is sometimes very hard. It's being grateful that crises represent opportunities for growth and that even through suffering, there is an enormous opportunity for gratitude. Gratefulness, it's like a lens that you look through all of the time, whereas gratitude is something that you experience in a moment and then it's gone. And I think that it's so important. And it's really hard. It's really hard work. I mean, you certainly have a lot in your life that has been painful, and I have a lot in my life that has been painful, and coming out as gay is only one of those things. It's hard to think back and remember those really painful times to the extent that we can remember them because of all of our trauma, and be grateful that helps us turn into the people that we are. But ultimately, that's the truth of it. And that once you start to orient your life in a grateful way, then happiness is almost a guarantee.
Yeah, I hadn't actually heard of the linguistic difference between gratefulness and gratitude. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I often ask my clients, what are you grateful for today? if I don't, if their nutrition's pretty dialed in, it's like, and it does force you to kind of look at today, what am I grateful for? But I think that's different than gratitude.
It's easy to feel gratitude for things that have gone well. Like I think that when you're standing on the podium at the CrossFit Games, of course, it's easy to feel gratitude for your coach. When you're achieving, it's easy to feel gratitude. When you're not achieving, when you're suffering, when you're in the hospital with cancer, where's your gratitude? It's hard.
Yeah.
But there's an opportunity there to feel grateful for the nurses and the people who are helping you, to feel grateful for your family who are there.
When you were talking through this, I was thinking, and I haven't necessarily been in this position in my life because I've been an athlete and I've been brought up in a very health conscious household and I've had a healthy body composition my entire life. But I wonder if there are people who have experienced changes in their life or circumstances that maybe have forced them to lose focus on their health and wellness and maybe have caused them to lose an aspect of their health or fitness or gain weight or whatever it may be. And so maybe they aren't grateful necessarily for the body that they're in this moment. They can't feel gratitude, but they can feel grateful for the body that they're in, for allowing them to get them through, a tough change in careers, or allows them to care for their parents or whatever it may be. And now they're in a place where they can be and have gratitude for like having the time to care for their body or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like reframing, reshaping, and using those words to feel like positive and love your body, because I don't think anyone can necessarily change their body without first having a really healthy amount of gratefulness or love for it.
You have to have hope and you have to have belief in who and what you can become, and that the changes that you're after are actually possible.
Yeah. Or putting it another way, that this will work.
And I think this is when we talk about like pillars, there's also like common barriers to change. And I think that this is a major barrier to change, is that people believe on a fundamental level, because of previous experiences, that nothing that they do will ever work. And that's sad, because I think that when we're talking about the wellness industry and the health and the nutrition industry, so much of it is designed, and not, designed in a malicious way, but it just is designed for people to fail. And so you fail over and over and over again by no fault of your own, just because you don't have the right toolbox and you're trying to use tools that aren't appropriate
And unsustainable.
Yeah, that you do that enough and you start to develop the belief that you can't. When really, like, it's more a matter of being at the wrong starting point or entry point for behavior change.
I think we talked about this a long time ago. Does the idea of reverse progress ring a bell?
Yeah.
Where it's like every time you start fresh, for a lack of a better term, and you've started fresh several times with no success, and success is in quotes because success can be defined in many different ways for each individual person. But if you're starting over for, let's say, the 10th time, you're not actually starting from square one. You're starting from square -10. Like, your hope that this is going to be the time that it works is now like reduced because of all the previous times that you haven't had success.
But there's also two ways to look at that, because I agree with you. And that starting over is what gets people into that sort of like programmed failure type scenario. However, I think that it's the belief that every time you do start, that you're starting from scratch and starting from zero, that sort of sets the stage there. Because you can have as many experiences that are unsuccessful as you want. But if you go into whatever comes next with the belief that you're not starting from scratch, you're not starting from zero, you're starting from a place of experience, and you can take those quote unquote failures forward and you can action the things that you learn from them, then you can start to make progress. But
yeah, you didn't fail, you learned. You learned what doesn't work. And that's valuable.
Right. But I think it's a big leap to get people to understand that and to kind of learn like what to do through a process of exclusion and like being objective and honest with the reasons why certain things didn't work for them. So many people are programmed to just take it as like a personal failure when a program doesn't work, where it's like, no, that program didn't work because it was written by someone who has 20 years of experience getting to the point where they could write that program. You have 0 years of experience. That's why it didn't work.
Yeah. Do you remember when we watched that video? It was in the gym. It was the day we put up the TV and you put on a video. I think you were on the treadmill. I was working out. You put up a video of like mountain biker and it was somebody, I can't remember exactly what it was.
It was Braden Bringhurst. He was climbing this trail in Moab called the Whole Enchilada. And it's in a film, so you can watch the film, and it's called 8,600 feet. But the Whole Enchilada Trail is usually a downhill, like people ride it downhill exclusively. And I guess he was originally just going to do like some techie, like here's how you ride up. Really
This guy's
stuff.
an outstanding mountain biker.
It's ridiculous. But the whole story, like no one has ever ridden up the entire trail, like
In one day.
every inch of
And
it
also, yeah.
in one day. And it's like 26 miles or something. 8,600 feet of vertical. Like it's insane. But yeah, I think you were going to say there's this one part in it.
Yeah. Hey, there is this one part in it. And I was working out and I kept looking over and it was still on that same part.
Yeah.
And I think he attempted it 50 something times.
It was like 54 attempts on this one section.
And he finally got it. But somebody like that, you would almost think like, wow, that guy is so stubborn. And I think people in the video were actually like, this guy's super stubborn. And I don't necessarily think stubborn needs to be a negative characteristic. I think it's almost better. Stubborn is no different really than persistence, except
Or like determined.
yeah. The more that I wanted to be perfect and the more I beat myself up over those small mistakes, the more it took away from me moving forward and making fewer mistakes in the future. Like the more that you get so sad about these mistakes and you just consistently beat yourself up, the less productive you are in that next hour or 2 hours. Like, yeah, acknowledge that you made a mistake because you don't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
But move forward. And that's not like settling like, oh, I made a mistake. It's not a big deal. It's not that. It's like, okay, I made a mistake, mental note, don't do that again, fix it. Maybe you put something in place to prevent that from happening, and then you move forward. This idea of perfectionism, it just takes away from so much.
Yeah.
And we see it a lot from our clients. It's this all or nothing. It shows up a lot in the all or nothing mentality. Again, like it's all for a period of time. And then as soon as it's nothing or it's one miss, it's nothing. And then they quit.
I think that, and it goes at odds, like perfectionism is ultimately at odds with self-confidence, self-acceptance, and self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like I think people who walk through the world and are very self-confident, and I don't mean like, there's a difference between being confident and being cocky. I find people who are cocky, they can't even admit they make mistakes. But people who have high self-esteem and they walk through the world with, self-assurance, self-confidence, they accept the things that they do. They accept their failures. They own them. And they still are willing to celebrate the things that they're doing right and the things that they're doing really well. And I think that's when people are they're trying to be so self-disciplined and they're trying to practice so much self-control, they actually forget to celebrate the little things that contribute ultimately to them becoming the person that they want to be, presumably if they're setting goals in that way. Whereas celebrating those things that you're doing right is a very important part of wellness, to be frank, like mental health, developing self-esteem, developing confidence. So it's kind of like being self-disciplined, but don't carry a lot of shame when you screw up, because that's just a part of the human experience. I don't think anyone's perfect.
Yeah. I read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, you
is
mean
that what it's
the best book ever written?
Is that the title?
Yeah, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
And this was really big for me as a person who has no experience managing people and now having a team of people who work with us. It was a story where there was a guy who owned a plane. I'm sure I'm just going to butcher this, but I'll get the gist of it out. He had a mechanic or something working on the plane and made a pretty bad error. And to the point where like the plane could have crashed. Comes down, he tells the guy, like, you made this huge mistake. You forgot to do this part. In the story, he says kind of to the audience, like, most people would expect that I would fire that person, but I didn't, because that person will never, ever, ever, ever let something like that ever happen again. And that makes him valuable. And to me, I was like, holy moly, like, that's incredible. it's all about learning. It's all about moving forward. And it's not like the guy's going to berate him. All you need to do is say like, hey, this was a miss.
Yeah.
You don't need to say anything more. Like the guy knows, like he will never let that happen again.
Yeah.
Like we are harder on ourselves, or at least most people, than anyone else will be on us. You know, that was a great, great learning opportunity. Thankfully, no one got hurt, but that was another story that kind of stuck with me. And that was like the beauty of imperfection. It makes you a better worker, a better person.
Yeah. If you're willing to observe and accept the mistakes that you make.
Yeah. And take responsibility for it.
There's definitely a subset of humans who will not do that.
Yeah. And those are people who are hard to deal with. But, you know, we get people who sign up with us and they're excited and they start a new endeavor and they think that because they've hired someone and they're investing in this, that things will go perfectly. But the fact of the matter is, like, nothing has really changed except now you've hired someone to help you. It doesn't automatically change you and negate the struggles that you faced. Good enough equals happiness. You know what? I did not nail every single conversation I had with clients, but it was good enough. And eventually, over the course of the next month, I will have really valuable conversations with every single one of my clients, even though I didn't do that today. Because I'm human.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe, you know, clients were distracted. I don't know what's going on in so-and-so's life when they message me back at 6 p.m. Opportunity missed, but we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between settling and like honestly and legitimately letting yourself off the hook when you shouldn't do that. And then settling for good enough when you need to. Like there's always opportunity for growth. And sometimes the growth is learning to withhold shame and judgment from yourself when you don't do something, perfectly. I mean, that's like, you can recognize when things are getting a little too comfortable and too easy and decide how to push outside of your comfort zone in whatever area you're working on. Like, I think that's good to do. I think it's good to constantly find new ways to challenge yourself, but you don't need to make it impossible. You don't need to do something that's like 10 out of 10 hard. You just sort of push outside of what you're currently doing and, you know, but it's still within your capability. And that keeps you sharp. It keeps you progressing and it keeps it manageable versus like how many people set out goals that you're just like, why did you do that? Like, you know, whether it's an athletic goal or something, and it just feels so unachievable. And frankly, like it's too big. And it sucks to see somebody set a goal like that and then not see it through when you're like, that you could have just set a smaller goal, a daily goal, a weekly goal, something that will move you in that direction. And maybe you can do that big thing, but maybe you'll have to wait a little while and do it in a couple of years. And that's okay too, because the process is going to be what changes you, not the accomplishment.
A lot of people, unfortunately, see that sort of thing as failure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have the wrong idea of what achievement actually gets you. They do think that achieving fill in the blank will change them as a person, but it's not. It's the process of getting there that changes you as a person. It's not doing the Ironman or running the ultra or getting to the director level at your job that makes you into that person. It's all of the things that you did along the way. That's what changes you. It's the little things. It's not the big things. And the big things for people who have no experience with that are just distracting, and they highlight how difficult the process actually is. So it prohibits you from actually ever like doing anything at all to get there.
I wish the words work in progress were as positively looked at as this perfection.
Yeah.
They're perfect. They're successful. I am a work in progress, and that's freaking awesome. We all are.
Yeah, you're working.
You're working. And that's like work in progress. Like, it's okay that I messed up. I'm getting better. There's a careful balance. But I think if you can just tip a little bit to the side of that, like, hey, I'm working hard. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not okay with that, but I am okay with that to some degree so that I can be productive in pushing forward. It's like, it's that fine balance.
Yeah.
But if you can just tip the scale just a little and not go too far to the extreme, then you're in a great spot, and we're all human. We're imperfectly perfect.
Anti-perfectionist.
Anti-perfectionist.
Yeah, I like it.